TalkTainmentRadio.com.
We give you a reason to come.
The world's greatest radio.
We give you a reason to stay.
Radio the way it should be heard.
You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, 3MR Production, its ownership, management, or staff.
We've got the power.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard, the world's greatest radio. I'm Brother Kahari, sitting in every week with Mr. Neely Fuller. Let me open up by saying, Mr. Fuller, how are you, sir?
I'm still learning.
All right. Mr. Fuller's works can be received. You can get his works at www.producejustice.com. Actually, they don't say www a lot anymore, but it's still www.producejustice.com. You can get two of those definitive works. Mr. Fuller, we are in a very strange lull right now. It's post-Trayvon Martin. It's pre the March on Washington. But here we go, 50 year celebration, marching from, Malcolm X said, marching from one dead man named Lincoln to another dead man named Washington on the Washington Mall asking for justice. But let's talk about this 50th anniversary march that's coming up. And does it, in your opinion, Mr. Fuller, what should we still be marching? Now, I know you're probably going to say you don't want to comment on what other people are doing, and I respect that, and I understand it. So I'm not asking you specifically to comment on the merits of the march. But is marching, what does the code say about these marches that have been done? Is that something that is historically played itself out, or is it something we still ought to be doing as the number one strategy for solving the problems of racism? Mr. Fuller.
Oh, well, I won't know whether or not numerically it would be the number one strategy, but anytime people are calling attention to racism, it's supposed to have a constructive effect because that is the biggest problem on earth. So it's just like if a person in a factory is calling attention to something that needs fixing, or in a house that's something that needs fixing. If the faucet is leaking and whatnot, and the faucet has been leaking maybe for several months, and every time someone comes in and mentions the faucet is still leaking in the kitchen, it needs fixing. Now, maybe no one is doing anything about it, but if the faucet actually needs fixing, because it is leaking and it shouldn't be leaking, then when people call attention to the faucet leaking, it may have a constructive effect in that it keeps reminding people that the faucet needs fixing, that you have a plumbing problem in the kitchen. So maybe to that extent, the marches do have an effect. The people who would be the greatest judge of whether the marches have an effect or not are the people who would do the marching. They know what they're doing it for, and I guess, and they know what they expect the result to be, I guess. So they would be the people who would best explain what they are intending for the marching to do. Because when people do things, they have an intent. If you buy an ice cream cone, you have an intent. You're trying to satisfy a need. And your taste buds may say, I want some ice cream, and I want it in the form of an ice cream cone. So when the person buys the ice cream, the person standing next to the person who is buying the ice cream might say, well, I don't care for ice cream. I never eat ice cream. But then the person who's buying the ice cream will say, well, I like ice cream, and I'm going to eat the ice cream, and then I'm going to tell you why I bought the ice cream and what the effect of having bought the ice cream and eaten the ice cream will have on me. And apparently it has an effect on you because you are standing next to me and you saw me buy the ice cream. So everything is about cause and effect.
Okay, I want to play a little clip from Cornel West in terms of what he would say if he had attended the 50th anniversary, because he's been uninvited allegedly. Let's listen to this right quick, Mr. Fuller.
Let us tell the truth and get off this Obama plantation and say, you know what? We're dealing with criminality in high places, criminality in these low places, and let's expose the hypocrisy, expose the mendacity, and be true to the legacy of Martin. You know there's going to be a march in August, right? And the irony is,
this is the march of honoring the 50th anniversary
and you know what the irony is,
I Have a Dream speech.
Brother Martin would not be invited to the very march in his name, because he would talk about drones, he'd talk about Wall Street criminality, he would talk about working class being pushed to the margins as profits went up for corporate executives and their compensation. He would talk about the legacies of white supremacy. Do you think anybody at that march would talk about drones and the drone president? Will you think anybody at that march would talk about the connection to Wall Street? They all on the plantation.
Are you invited?
Oh, can you imagine? Good God, no. I mean, I pray for them because I'm for liberal reform, but liberal reform is too narrow, it's too truncated, and of course the two-party system is dying, and therefore it doesn't have the capacity to speak to these kinds of issues. So no, not at all.
If you were invited to speak at the 50th anniversary celebration of the I Have a Dream speech, the March on Washington, August 28, 1963 is when it happened, 50 years ago, what would you say? Give us a few minutes.
I would say we must never tame Martin Luther King Jr. or Fannie Lou Hamer or Ella Baker or Stokely Carmichael. They were unbossed. They were unbought. That Martin was talking about a beloved community, which meant that it subverts any plantation, Bush's plantation, Clinton's plantation, Obama's plantation, and the social forces behind those plantations, which have to do with Wall Street, have to do with multinational corporations, and we're going to focus on poor people, we're going to focus on working people across the board. We're going to talk about the connection between drones, which is a form of crimes against humanity outside of national borders. We're going to talk about Wall Street criminality. We're going to talk about how we ensure that our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters have their dignity affirmed. We're going to talk about the children. Martin Luther King Jr. was a free black man. He was a Jesus-loving free black man. Will the connection between drones, new Jim Crow, prison industrial complex, attacks on the working class, escalating profits at the top be talked about and brought together during that march? I don't hold my breath. But Brother Martin's spirit would want somebody to push it. And that's part of his connection to Malcolm X. That's part of his connection to so many of the great freedom fighters that go all the way back to the first slave who stepped on these decrepit shores.
All right, Mr. Fuller, your thoughts on that was Dr. Cornel West. Of course, you know who he is out of, I think he's still at Princeton University, at least he was. But he has been an outspoken critic of the Obama administration, him along with Tavis Smiley. But he said something very interesting on that 50th anniversary. Mr. Fuller, if you had the mic and you were the so-called featured lecturer or talker at that 50th anniversary march, if you were there, what message, what would you say, Mr. Fuller? I'm curious as to what you would say in front of maybe 200,000 people. What would you say, Mr. Fuller?
I would say that the non-white people, all of the black people on the planet, on a one-on-one, everyday basis, should by now be on a quality relationship, interaction, prison, you might say, or context with the white people of this planet, because we're in a system of white supremacy. That system should be replaced with a system of justice. The system of white supremacy is the only government on the planet. It's a government that is designed for the mistreatment of non-white people domination and mistreatment of non-white people by those white people, not all white people, but by those white people who have chosen to dominate and mistreat people based on color. And it was an idea that's been around like forever, it seems, and in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And it is a very successful operation, a very successful system. And we're doing the march in 1963. That's what the issue was, and that issue still is number one on the plate. So we'd be still addressing the same issue, the system of white supremacy. You have to get rid of the entire system and replace it with a system of justice. Presumably, that system of justice would be guaranteeing that no person is mistreated. There's no person anywhere on the planet now, not just in this section of town or that section of the village or over on that side of the ocean and whatnot. That's what the guarantee should be. Everybody should be alarmed when anybody is mistreated. And then the other part of a system of justice would be guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And that's what everybody's aim when they're walking around every day should be. Everybody should be thinking about that. Is there anybody around here who's being mistreated? Because if it is, I'm supposed to be on my job of seeing to it that that doesn't happen. That's what I'm on the planet for. That's why I was born. That's my mission. And if anybody needs constructive help, is there any constructive help that I can give to that person? If it's just so much as a kind word or whatever, any constructive help. Now, this is the mode that everybody should be in. And what has happened is people are not in that mode. That's all it is. Have it in mind when you walk down the street. Is anybody being mistreated? Is anybody about to be mistreated? And is anybody that I can help? Is anybody who needs help that I can contribute in some way, some small way or some large way, to giving that person the most constructive help? And everybody who passes everybody should be thinking about that. That should be the dominant thing in each and every person's mind, rather than what we have here now. This tacky, trashy, and terroristic interaction that's been glorified between people. It's glorified in entertainment and everything else. I mean, just be tacky with everybody. I mean, just talk to people in a tacky manner. Try to figure out some kind of language that's going to be insulting or is going to make somebody depressed. Even make jokes. The standard joke is about poking fun at somebody, making somebody feel that they are inadequate or something like that. That's what a joke usually is. And people pay good money to go and stand up and hear people joke about people being harmed, verbally or physically or financially or something. And that's no joke. We need to change the entire culture of the entire world. That's what everybody should be doing, whether they're marching or just in an office building or in a warehouse or riding a bus. When you get on a bus, you can feel the hostility, particularly among black people. You can almost cut it with a knife. If somebody's just waiting to step on somebody's foot and then say something derogatory, and then a knife fight breaks out, or gunfire bursts out, or something like that. But no kind words. Nobody's thinking of helping anybody, for the most part. There are a few people that do, and sometimes you see it, and it always kind of gives you an uplifting, you might say, spirit when you see it happen, because it's not a routine thing. It's not the way people are normally. People pass each other on the street, and they're eyeing each other. Or, in the case of black people and white people, they're just walking past each other and making sure that they don't make eye contact. And particularly where the white people are concerned. Don't make eye contact with any black people at all. Act like they are not there. Pass them as briskly as possible.
Mm-hmm.
because they're not even supposed to be here on the planet with you, except when you want them for something, or they're the butt of some kind of joke, or somebody who is an object of ridicule sitting in one of the small restaurants somewhere, out on the plain somewhere, and everybody comes in with their plaid shirts on and waving flags and all like that, and then start making what they call racial jokes while they drink their beer.
So your primary points would be, there would be 3 or 4 primary points you would make in that speech. Am I correct?
Yes, and that is, you got to get rid of the entire system, because it's a total culture, a world culture, called white supremacy. You have to figure out a way to replace that system, that awesome system. I mean, and try to do it overnight, try to do it in record time, and I think it can be done by just simply altering, first of all, the interaction between people. People are avoiding talking about the hard issues. And the hard issues are black people can't get along with each other on account of the system of racism, and white people can't get along with black people, and they are causing all of this. The white people who believe in the system of white supremacy and haven't come up with a better idea for running a better system, because they are very comfortable with the system that's in place, which is understandable. But it's not a matter of a person being comfortable with evil. It's a matter of a person coming up with something better. And that something better would be replacing this system of racism, if you want to put it in words, with a system of justice. And that means you have to deliberately interact with people. Not just avoid contact with people. No, you deliberately interact with people, but with a constructive intent. As it is now, when people interact with each other at a subliminal level, truth be told, most people walk around with animosity for other people, because that's what the system breeds. Just look at the way we interact with each other. Look at the way we talk to each other. The particularly black culture is just as raggedy as it can be. It's just raggedy. Total raggedy. Total. I mean, there's nothing positive you can say about the essence of black culture the way it is today. There's nothing constructive you can say about it. You have to really pick through it and find something that might be of constructive use. You really have to just pick through it, like trying to find grains of wheat in a stack of needles. It's just that meticulous.
Wow, that's heavy, because there's a lot to be said. Tavis Smiley is on the other end of the Cornel West thing. President Obama recently made, probably for the first time in 5 years, any comments related to black people, race in particular, because he stayed away from that. And he said something in reference to Tavis Smiley. To Trayvon Martin, to the Trayvon Martin situation. A lot of people said it came because he was under a lot of pressure to say something. Maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. But Tavis Smiley's response to it, it's quite interesting. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to hold up on that just for a second, and I am going to get into it because I want people to know exactly what was said, and then I'm going to give Mr. Fuller a chance to give his reflections on what the president said racially, his racial comments, which took place about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We didn't get a chance to go over it, but we're going to go over it today. Stay right there. More to come on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is Satin, your MC host for the 7th Annual African Village Arts Festival. This is a 3-day village type event that starts August the 16th, 17th, and 18th in Columbus, Ohio. We are calling for artists, sponsors, vendors, and volunteers. This festival is sponsored in part by Ohio Alliance for Arts Education. Please call 614-252-7525 or 614-252-2430 or email us at info@galleryinthehood.com for more information. See you there.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
Richard Holt, research chemist, University of Rio Grande in southeastern Ohio, which again, you can see your condition. Richard's Remedy is a multi-purpose cream that works on a variety of skin conditions. I sell it in a 1 ounce container through the internet for $12.95 at richardsremedy.com.
All major credit cards accepted. Call 937-607-4259 or go to email info@talktainmentradio.com for a free sample of Richard's Remedy.
Hi, I'm Joan London, and if you're worried about your parent or a loved one living alone like I was, and you want reliable senior care information, then call A Place for Mom, the nation's largest senior living referral service. You'll get free information on assisted living, Alzheimer's care, nursing homes, even important financial information.
They had obviously researched every place, not just given me names. Really? Yeah. They found me a place for what she could afford, and it was magnificent.
We're now very confident that she's safe, and they just helped every step of the way, and I can't thank them enough.
So if you're struggling to find reliable senior living information, call A Place for Mom. This is a free service, and you can trust them to help you.
If you're struggling to find reliable senior living information for your mom or dad, then call or go online to get the free help you need during this turbulent time. Call now, 800-371-5898, 800-371-5898.
TalkTainmentRadio.com. Food for thought.
I guess it's time for us to have that talk with our children on how we should carry ourselves and act in public. If ever there is a feeling of uneasiness about a situation or feeling that something is not right, we should try to exit the area immediately. And if threatened, call 911. Back in the day, parents routinely had that talk, and I guess those days never really left us. I spent my younger years in Sanford, Florida. It was segregated then by law, and it still seems to be in some situations and with some people. I remember family members routinely having conversations on how to act and react in public. Sadly, those conversations need to continue.
That's another Food for Thought. To hear additional Food for Thought, stay tuned to TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio, the way it should be heard.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
Of the president. You said on Twitter his comments were as weak as pre-sweetened Kool-Aid. He took too long to show up and express outrage.
I appreciate and applaud the fact that the president did finally show up. But this town has been spinning a story that's not altogether true. He did not walk to the podium for an impromptu address to the nation. He was pushed to that podium. A week of protest outside the White House, pressure building on him inside the White House, pushed him to that podium. So I'm glad he finally arrived. But when he left the podium, he still had not answered the most important question, that Kingian question, where do we go from here? That question this morning remains unanswered, at least from the perspective of the president. And the bottom line is, this is not Libya, this is America. On this issue, you cannot lead from behind. What's lacking in this moment is moral leadership. The country is begging for it. They're craving it. And I disagree with the president respectfully that politicians, elected officials, can't occupy this space on race. Lincoln did, Truman did, Johnson did, President Obama did. He's the right person in the right place at the right time, but he has to step into his moment. I don't want him to be like Bill Clinton when he's out of office, regretting that he didn't move on Rwanda. I don't want the president to look back, David, and realize that he didn't do as much as he could have in this critical
To Tavis's point, Professor, there has been criticism. It's been building over the course of the week. Janet Langard-Cohen wrote in the Washington Post, journalist and author, on Tuesday that he had imposed himself in this silence about race, and she wrote this: "During this period of self-imposed silence, we have watched our criminal laws become radicalized, our race criminalized. Blacks continue to be faced with punishing unfairness and inequalities, soaring rates of unemployment, discriminatory drug laws, disproportionate prison sentences, unequal access to health care and healthy food, unfair stop and frisk policies, and accidental shootings of unarmed black men by the police. These and more are treated with indifference or contempt. We're told to stop complaining, to get over it. No one cares. Tavis's argument that this has not been part of this president's agenda.
I disagree with Tavis in a profound way. President Obama has been talking about race and doing things about race for a long time. And the reality is that he walked to the podium. He wasn't pushed to the podium. He walked to the podium. He's been trying to have this conversation, and this was the event, the criminal justice system, that pushed him over the level. And what he said about Trayvon was a continuation of what he said when he was shot in February 2012. I think that he said, if you read his statement, his whole statement, he said, let's have a conversation on race. Let's convene that. Let's talk about, we made some progress as a society, but we still have a long way to go.
All right, Mr. Fuller, he says, let's have a conversation on race. Let's do that, Mr. Fuller. Let's have a conversation on race. Mr. Fuller, how do we start the conversation on race?
By talking about justice, because a lot of people, including a lot of black people, are very uncomfortable talking about race. And so usually arguments break out among black people themselves. This is what people tell me. They go to meetings, and a person will stand up and start talking about race. And if there are a lot of white people present, and there are a lot of black people present, people get nervous. So you can go directly to the concept of justice. Because when you talk about justice, you're talking about race anyway. So if you talk about guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, that will be the definition, the compensatory definition, the one that I made up, called justice. And that will be about race. And so the conversation will encapsulate the race issue and all other issues, all of the ills of the entire planet. Once you start talking about justice and you give it that definition, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, you look around the room, wherever you happen to be, at a meeting or whatever, business meeting, a parents-teachers meeting, a meeting in a factory about how the factory is going to be run and what the staff is going to be doing. If you go right to the jugular, which will be the issue of justice, balance between people, with that type of definition, it's impossible to get lost. And that will take in the race issue, because somebody will bring up the race issue anyway. And the way that I have written it in my books, the minute someone brings up the race issue in a meeting, then that means that the discussion is, the floor is open for the discussion of race. But you don't necessarily just have to go to race directly. I recommend that people don't. If I go to a meeting, I'm not going to talk about race directly because it makes people want to back off.
But
they want to leave before you even get started.
But isn't that being deceptive, Mr. Fuller?
No, it really isn't. Because, see, people are thinking in terms of, well, they want to brag about being black, which means that they are implying that there's something incorrect about being white, even though these are the creations of the Creator. See, and then so everybody gets into this black pride thing or white pride thing, and people immediately start taking sides. It's not about taking sides based on black and white. It's about taking sides based on justice and non-justice, because that's what you're really aiming for. Being black doesn't mean anything if you don't believe in justice, and being white doesn't mean anything if you don't believe in justice, except you believe in non-justice, and that doesn't make any difference what shade you are, or how tall you are, or who your cousin was, or anything like that, or what so-called nationality you have. Like a lot of people say that they take pride in being an Englishman, or take pride in being a Frenchman, or take pride in being Afrocentric. Well, you're not supposed to be proud of any of those things if you don't believe in justice, because these words mean nothing. No nationality means anything. And waving a flag if you don't believe in not mistreating people. You got to believe in not mistreating people, and you got to believe in helping people that need help the most. Otherwise, you don't even have any business breathing.
So what you're saying is that it all comes down to why you do what you do and what the constructive value of it is.
Absolutely. Everything in the universe is either constructive or non-constructive. Every behavior of each and every person, each and every day, is either going to be in the constructive area or the non-constructive area. Every move that a person makes in the course of just one day or 5 minutes is going to be either constructive or non-constructive. What I'm doing right this minute has got to be either constructive or non-constructive. It's going to fall in one of those categories. There's no such thing as in between.
Mr. Fuller, why do we need a discussion on race anyway? That's an old topic. Why not just everybody get along and forget about it? Don't you think we're placing too much emphasis on race? Why do we need to have this discussion anyway?
Because racism is the biggest problem on the planet. You can't get any major problem. I have this on the back of the book, the textbook for victims of racism. No major problem can be solved that exists between the people of the known universe can be eliminated until racism is eliminated. None. It's fruitless to talk about the so-called Middle East. That's a race problem. You take the race equation out of it, you take the color equation out of it, it disappears. And anything else that comes up, the housing problem, mortgages that are not being handled correctly and whatnot, you take the racial element out of it, no housing problem. Schools. Who is going to what school in order to learn what, about what, in order to do what, and where the school is going to be, and what the school population is going to be, and what the teachers are going to look like. That's all a race problem. People in the Northwestern Hemisphere have been arguing about it since the 1950s, and really back even before then. But it really came to a head in the 1950s, and they had to have legislation about school segregation and school integration. And even to this day, that issue hasn't been settled. Based on what? A race problem. That's all the school problem is. There isn't any other element in the school problem about pencils and books and rulers and blackboards and whiteboards and desks. That's not the issue. That's not the thing that makes the school problem volatile. What makes the school problem volatile is what color the people are that are in the school. Same way with neighborhoods. Well, whether or not this is going to be a black neighborhood or a white neighborhood. Well, we got new buildings going up. Who's going to be in those buildings? White people or non-white people, or a mixture of both? And if so, how many of what? And how long will it stay that way if you have a 50-50 balance in that building? How long will it stay that way in a school if you have a 50-50 balance? Black children, white children, 50-50. Well, the record shows, little by little, the white children start disappearing. Where do they go? To what they call a white school. Now, talk about religion. How are you going to settle a religious issue and you can't even get the color issue straight? People arguing about the Bible and what Jesus said and what Moses said and what Muhammad said and all like that. But when you look around, you see they can't get the color thing straight, and that's why they can't get the religious thing straight. Martin Luther King, which you're fixing to have the march about, said himself, the most separate hour is 11 o'clock in the Northwestern Hemisphere of people in churches. White people and black people can't even go to the same church, truth be told. That's something everybody just tips around, even though they say we're all one in Christ. Come on. Hypocrisy, 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 which is the thing that props up the system of white supremacy, because the entire system of white supremacy is hypocritical. The white supremacists walk around talking about they believe in justice, they believe in Jesus, they believe in Moses, they believe in anything and everything that's supposed to be wholesome and constructive. But what they really believe in is white supremacy, the strongest religion in the world. So what we need to do is just slash through the nonsense and talk straight to each other, white people and non-white people. Say what's really on your mind.
Are people afraid to do that, Mr. Fuller?
Absolutely, and becoming more and more nervous about it because they think.
Well, what is the nature of that fear?
The nature of the fear is to be honest, because for one thing, white people won't tell black people how they really think, and black people are glad of it, and that's where the problem is.
Say that again, Mr. Fuller.
White people will not tell black people what they really think about black people. And black people are glad of it.
Why? Why are black people
It
glad
hurts
of
their
it?
feelings. Because it's going to hurt. Because you have a system of white supremacy, that means that white people, if they tell the truth, will say, I'm really hostile toward you. I have hostility toward you. I mean, just a few people will step forward, like Adolf Hitler, and say, yes, I just don't think that you people rate very high as far as humanity is concerned, as far as civilization is concerned. In fact, you need to just be pushed off to the side of the road, and if you give us any lip about it, I mean, you should be stomped on and exterminated. Okay? And many, 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 many millions of white people think the same way that Adolf Hitler think. And black people know that they think this way, but don't want them to say it because it hurts our feelings. Well, maybe we need our feelings hurt if it's the truth, because the truth is the only way we're going to get out of this. I have no problems with it.
So
if every white person would stand up and say what they really think about that black person that they pass on the street, what they really think about that person, not what they want to think or what they think they ought to think, or be so-called politically correct when they do talk to a black person, but just say exactly what's on their mind.
So you're
exactly,
sick. So you're sick and tired of the deception.
It's the deception that keeps the thing going. It's the hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is the sin. It's in fact in the.
Well, let me throw this at you, Mr. Fuller. If white people were to really say how they really think about black people, what would come out of their mouths?
I think they would say that they have hostility toward black people because they'd just rather not be around them or involve themselves with black people, simply because black people are not about anything that they have any interest in, except just to be subordinate to them and render services when they ask for the services or demand the services, which they have done under the system of white supremacy since the beginning of white supremacy. And they are comfortable with that. But to have to explain themselves and how they feel and all like that, they don't want to do that. And black people are glad of it. And that's where the problem is, because we're not going to solve this problem until white people say exactly, look, I'm going to tell you what I really don't like about you people, other than your color, along with your color, or whatever.
Mr. Fuller,
yes.
I am going to, there's a letter, I don't know if you're familiar with Patrick Buchanan, was supposed to have sent a letter to President Obama. And I think it might address exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to read portions of it. And he really pretty much comes close to saying almost what you have said. Some people have said it sounded like the Ku Klux Klan writing a letter to him. But it didn't to me. It sounded pretty much like what you are saying, where you really want to hear the truth and no more lies. That's what I'm getting, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, yes.
And what I
People
would do,
say what's really on their minds. It's nothing to take the place of truth. You can't solve problems anywhere, even on the moon, on Mars, unless you're going to face up to the truth. I mean, truth is the essence of getting things done in the way that they're going to get done. Even when the truth hurts. The truth hurts a lot of people. The truth hurts me. I mean, there's a lot of things about myself that I probably don't want to face up to. I mean, but people should face up to it. Doctors tell people the truth sometimes when people don't want to hear it. Yeah. I mean, any doctor that's worth being a doctor will say, look, you have cancer. I know you don't want to hear it, but you got it. Now let's deal with it.
Let's deal with it. Okay, Mr. Fuller, stay right there. More to come. We're going to get into what Patrick Buchanan said to the president, and then we've got a caller on the line waiting to ask Mr. Fuller a question. All that and more coming up next on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
At TalkTainmentRadio.com, we don't just talk. We don't just entertain. We've combined talk radio with the latest in online entertainment, with the ability to listen live at no cost 24/7. We are the premier online radio station. Outperforming the digital quality of our competitors, our shows are produced in a state-of-the-art studio by the best radio professionals in the business. Hosting live shows on location at some of the area's greatest and most popular events, we give you exactly what you want to hear with talk radio that matters to you. Join us online at TalkTainmentRadio.com, where you can listen live or play podcasts from the best shows in online talk radio. We give you a reason to come. We give you a reason to stay. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Radio the way it should be heard.
In 50 feet, turn left. Why are you driving so slowly?
After a few drinks, I'm taking it slow.
Well, you're not fooling the cop behind you.
What?
Get ready to pay in 0.1 miles.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Are you a minority or women business owner looking for a great resource for your business? Well, you can stop looking. MBE Magazine is the one for you. MBE Magazine has been a national resource for minority and women business owners for almost 30 years. No one supports and understands you like MBE Magazine. Visit them today at www.mbemag.com to subscribe to the digital or print version. MBE is a proud sponsor of the Exceptions to the Rules radio show.
Did you know that birthday parties help build confidence in kids?
Yeah. Did you know that giving kids less sugar before bedtime helps them sleep better?
Oh, totally. Did you know that friendly kids have more friends?
Everybody knows that.
Hey, guys, did you know that most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
I didn't know that.
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right car seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We've got the power.
Justice is better than racism.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. If you want to get Mr. Fuller's works, Mr. Fuller, you can go get the Word Guide and the textbook for victims of white supremacy. You can get that book, both of those books, from go to the website www.producejustice.com, producejustice.com, and follow the prompts. It'll take you there. If you want to hear this broadcast again, if you missed it or didn't get a chance to hear it all, you can hear it tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on TalkTainmentRadio.com, or you can go to our website and go to TalkTainmentRadio.com, hit programs, and go to the Compensatory Concept, and you'll get a boatload of podcasts. That means programs that are stored and reserved that you can hear on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Mr. Fuller, I want to read a letter that was sent to President Obama by Patrick Buchanan, the columnist and writer, wrote The Death of the West and some other books, and he was a former Republican presidential candidate. He said he said a whole lot of stuff interesting in this letter. One, he said, first, America has been the best country on earth for black folks. It was here that 600,000 black people, brought from Africa in slave ships, grew into a community of 40 million, and they were introduced to Christian salvation and reached the greatest level of freedom and prosperity blacks have ever known. Jeremiah Wright ought to go down on his knees and thank God he is an American. Second, no people in the world has done more to lift up black people than white Americans. Untold trillions have been spent on the 60s on the welfare, food stamps, rent supplements, Section 8 housing, Pell Grants, student loans, legal services, Medicaid, earned income tax credits, and poverty programs designed to bring the African American community into the mainstream. And he just goes on and on and on. You talked about you wanted white people to speak straight. I think Patrick Buchanan, of all the white males I've heard speak in the last few years, and it's what you call a person who's out front, has done pretty much what you're talking about. Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir. But the choice of words, I would say, is not accurate. For one thing, there's no such place or people as American people. There's no such thing as American people. That's a concept. That's a concept. Like peace is a concept. It's something that people aspire to. I aspire to be an American. I also aspire to be an African. I also aspire to be an Asian. If you're talking about the essence of all three of those words, African, Asian, American. I call them the three A's. And that would be what? A person who practices justice. That's what an African is. That's what an Asian is. And that's what an American is. But nobody practices justice in a system of white supremacy. You can't have white supremacy and justice on the same planet at the same time. So the only government you really have on the planet is the system of white supremacy. That's why it's called the system of white supremacy.
But Mr. Fuller, he was, at least he opened up and was saying some pretty interesting things. I interpret him as almost saying, look, if it wasn't for white people, you would still be savages. You'd still be on the quote-unquote dark continent running around beating drums and eating each other. I mean, that's the racist implication that I get from this thing. Man, it just blew me away to see this. But do you think the average white person thinks like this, Mr. Fuller?
I don't know. The average white person would have to step forward and tell everybody. That's what I'm asking for. The average white person on a job and everywhere else to tell those black people who is on the job with them right this minute exactly what they think about them. And black people tell the white people exactly what they
think about them.
And they do it without raising voices and name-calling and fighting and cursing and all this thing we traditionally do. Just sit down and say, now, here's the real deal. Here's how I really feel about you. You know, and I'm going to tell you why I feel this way about you, how I see you as a person or whatever you want to call yourself. And each person does that. And then we can get somewhere. Because all it is just being honest.
And stop speaking in code.
And stop speaking in all these different codes and everybody being hypocritical. Hypocrisy is sin. That's what I have put it in the word guide. That's the definition of sin. Hypocrisy, being hypocritical, showing a false face. That once you show a false face to anybody, that is a recipe for total disaster. If everybody just be honest, we can get something done. You know? I mean, when you can tell a person to their face, really, you know what? I don't like you, and I don't think I ever will like you. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I will do X, Y, Z. Now, I think most people, in essence, is something in people that makes them appreciate that. They'll say, you know what? This guy, Ralph, that I work with, I don't like him, and he doesn't like me, and we both understand that. But there's one thing about it. He pays me on time, you know. He helps me out when I need help, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But he will tell me to my face, he really doesn't like my personality, and he doesn't like this about me, he doesn't like that about me, and I tell him the same thing, and we get along fine.
Get along just fine. Caller.
You better believe it.
Let me bring in the caller. Caller, you've been waiting patiently. I appreciate it. Go ahead. You have a question for Mr. Fuller.
Hi. Yes, I do. Greetings, host, and greetings, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, I have your book, and I'm slightly less confused, but still mistreated, and I'm grateful for it. But I had a question about a comment you made, how blacks and whites cannot go to church together. Regarding the so-called mega church, where you see white people and non-white people attending, and this illusion of everybody getting along. Do you believe, or could it possibly be that money is the driving force behind this, and how does racism, white supremacy play a role in it?
Mr. Fuller.
Oh, the question about black people and white people going to the same church?
Well, what she's talking about some of those big churches that you see with all these big name, mostly white preachers, some black, but mostly white preachers, where they have the big push now is so-called code word diversity. Make sure you got some blacks in the audience so it doesn't make it look like a racist, some would say. And she's saying, how does that play in terms of what does in terms of white supremacy? Religion.
I would have to look at the church and make an assessment, but I tend to believe that it's just another part of the hypocrisy, because in many churches you have the what is really being taught in that church, what is really being going on in many churches, is the promotion of hypocrisy, saying one thing and doing another. This is not unusual in many millions of churches. Everybody's saying one thing and doing something else. The agenda is altogether different from what they say the agenda is. They'll say we all come together in Christ without explaining exactly what that means in practical terms. Because when you get down to the practical part, everybody's being hypocritical, or many people are being hypocritical. I won't say everybody, but just the entire society in the system of white supremacy, because all of this is taking place within the framework of the system of white supremacy. So people are forced to be, by the white supremacists, hypocritical. That's the very thing that this whole conversation this morning is about. I'm saying we have to get rid of the hypocrisy. Everybody has to say what's really on their minds. That person that's sitting there in the church has to say what's really on their minds. Why are you in this particular church? You can ask a white person that, if you can get that white person to tell the truth. Why are you coming to this black church? Why are you coming to this church where black people are? Do you see something in black religion that white people over there on the other side of town don't have in their religion? And if you see something that you're comfortable with, what is that comfort? Is it the singing and nothing else? Or is it the singing and something else? And if so, that's something else meaning what? Are you over here, if you're a male white man, looking for a black female? Or are you over here looking for little boys? You could be here for that. What's your agenda? What's your game? Are you being hypocritical? Is this really about Jesus? Or is it about some kind of agenda that you got that has a racist intent? See, you got to go. See, it's a multitude of questions that have to be asked and answered. And people have to be truthful. People know what they want. People have an idea. They have a vague idea when they gravitate toward a situation, what they're looking for. But very seldom will people tell you the truth about what they're really in a particular situation that they went deliberately into.
Mr. Fuller, you said something else that caught my attention also. You said black folks don't want white folks to tell them the truth. Kind of expound on that a little bit more.
Well, we kind of show that by the evolution of the N-word. A lot of white people want to call black people exactly by the so-called N-word, I mean, and spell it out. But they know that, hey, they don't want to hear that. That's volatile. That's what I want to call them. But I can't say that that's how I really think about them, you know. And so I'm not going to say it. In fact, I'm going to tell them I love them. I'm going to tell them anything that I think they want to hear, but I am going to see to it that they don't get justice. But I will tell them anything. And a perfectly operating white supremacist, the most refined white supremacist, will do just that. They will tell you everything that you want to hear. They will promise you everything and give you absolutely nothing. A smile, a handshake, a pat on the back, and as soon as you turn your back and walk out, they will wink at the other white supremacists and say, "We got them again."
Wow. Caller, did that answer your question, or did you have something else that you wanted to add?
No, yes, sir. It answered. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you listening, really do. Appreciate your question also. I thought it was an excellent question. Mr. Fuller, so what you're saying is that in order to deal with this hypocrisy, that is the key to taking the first step in dealing with the race issue. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. The books that I have written, I start with one word: truth. Truth plus justice plus correctness is the equation for peace. But you first start with truth. You have to reveal whatever the truth is. Everybody has to stand up. You might say, like they say in the old church, and testify exactly what the truth is and be willing to tell it. Hey, this is the way I am, warts and all. Okay? And my goal is to do such and such a thing if I can, and be telling the truth about it, rather than stand up and just say something false after false after false after false, which is what the whole refined system of white supremacy is all about. Deception. You deceive people by saying things that are not true, by showing a false face. And
but Mr.
there are
Fuller,
some people who are classified as Indians, I mean, sometimes called red people and all like that, who say they speak with forked tongue, say one thing and do another. We don't understand that type of thinking. I mean, that's alien to us. And then there's a term that I've heard white people use, I mean, at least in folklore, say honest Indian, meaning these people, some of the tribes, they didn't even know what a lie was. They'd always tell it just like it is. Whatever they thought, they'd tell you. Well, you know, and they would expect you to do the same thing. And the white supremacists looked at that and said, we don't do that at all. We don't do that among each other. We lie about everything. We lie about, you know, finances. We lie about whether or not I'm going to repair your car. Okay? You know, if you want to fast forward that into the modern world, can you get your car repaired without being lied to? It's almost impossible.
It's almost impossible. Yes, it is. That's true. That's, Mr. Fuller, that is heavy because at the core of white supremacy, and you've said it many times, is deception. At the very core, that is the foundation of it. Am I right?
Absolutely. You cannot have a corrupt system where you dominate people and mistreat people over a long period of time without deceiving them. You have to lie. You have to tell one lie right after another. And number two lie backs up number one lie, and on and on and on. Just a multitude of lies. And show a false face. Give the smile and the handshake. And all at the same time. Just like in what they call organized crime, and racism is organized crime. I mean, the hug, the kiss, and then the bullet in the head.
Then the bullet in the head. Mr. Fuller, you got about 30 seconds. Let me get your closing thought.
Well, like I said, we started off talking about the march that's coming up. But what should be talked about, and what I'm talking about right now, I think it should be on the agenda. Get rid of the hypocrisy. Everybody say what's on their minds, what they like, what they don't like, and then we'll sit down and look at what everybody likes and what everybody doesn't like and why, and give constructive reasons. There's got to be a constructive reason for why you like what you like or why you don't like what you don't like. Everybody say that, and then sort it all out so that we can come up with a constructive solution once and for all in the history of the planet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the